I've been a member of this church for close to 30 years, but my stewardship journey began a long time before that. When I was a child, I had the experience, I'm sure you probably did too, of my parents encouraging me to put my few coins, maybe a quarter, into a little church, cardboard church that was like a little savings bank. You put it in the slit, and I did it because they said that's a good thing to do, but I never really knew why. As I got older and after I came back to the church as a young adult after college, again, I would put what I considered to be what I could afford, what spare bills I had in my wallet that day into the offering plate. Again, I didn't have much concept of why that was something that was important to me. I guess I didn't begin to realize that my spiritual journey is deeply entwined with my stewardship journey until I was invited to participate in the stewardship campaign at the church I was attending. This was back in California. And it happened to be an Episcopal church, but the lessons are the same. I'd like to share with you just a few of the landmarks along my way that I encountered in my stewardship journey. The first lesson I learned as being part of that stewardship campaign is that giving has a deeply spiritual and scriptural basis. And I was part of a small group that was charged with not just planning the stewardship campaign, but with spending time before that studying about stewardship. That was the first time I really learned much about the whys of stewardship and what God is asking of us, what God is giving us, and how to become part of that cheerful cycle of gratitude and giving. And so the first lesson that I took on board and got deep into my bones was the idea that everything I have comes ultimately from God. God gave me gifts to use. God helped me earn the money that I can give, that I can use to make change happen in the world. God gave me gifts that I can use to be in fellowship and caring with those around me. And in the Episcopal Church, or at least in the church that I was attending, part of the liturgy every week around the offering time was this sentence, "All things come of thee, O Lord, and of thine own have we given thee." And I remember that almost every day, but certainly every Sunday when we have offering time and we sing the doxology and we place our gifts into the plate. I continually try to remember that everything is ultimately from God and I'm giving it back. So then I kind of moved on to the next point on my journey, the next blaze on the trail, or the next sign indicating the off-ramp, which is, okay, how am I giving? How am I giving? As Abby was talking about, the concept of giving cheerfully, certainly cheerfully, but also out of abundance. And in that first stewardship campaign that I was ever involved in, we developed a little tagline, which was, "Take it off the top," which is kind of a glib saying, but it was a way of saying that my gift back to God is from my abundance. It's the first gift that I give. It goes back to the scripture of God asking the Israelites to give their first fruits. So I try to keep that in mind. And for years, I've tried to adhere to the practice of making my check that I write for the church the first thing after, as money comes in, that's the first thing that I take out of it. And quite honestly, there were many, many months, days, years when I didn't feel very abundant in my balance in my checking account, but I tried to be trusting and think it will work out. I will try to make my gifts to be my first fruits. Then the next step on my way was becoming more attuned to my spiritual gifts and to understand that concept of spiritual gifts. As the Sunday school kids are going to have their verse this month from James, every good and perfect gift is from God. And that means that my gifts are things like helping, giving, teaching, and all of those things. When I'm aware of those and try to understand and put those to their best use, that's when I feel most spiritually alive. Now, do I do things that really aren't in my spiritual gift portfolio? Sure, because they need to get done. But that helps me develop other sides of my spiritual gifts and helps me understand the fullness of what God needs to fulfill his purposes in the world. So that was something that I learned here at this church through going through the spiritual gifts process and then helping Ellie with teaching that to various groups during the years. And it's always a revelation to me, fresh and new every time that we do it together. So the final, probably not the final lesson, but the most recent lesson, let me put it that way, is how all of these things come together to support the work that we do together in the church. The sort of taglines that I remember about that, or the words that have spoken to my sense of that, are some words from John Wesley that he preached very often about the use of our gifts and the use of our money. He said, "Employ whatever God has entrusted you with in doing good, all possible good." I have realized in a rather deep way that God gives us the ways and means and entrusts us to use those ways and means. We need those wisely used ways and means to provide a sound foundation for the ministries, the ways in which we want to be the church in the world. My best example of that is I'm deeply involved with the food pantries here and with the food ministry. And that has spoken to the ways in which I can really use my gifts and my passion. And I have awe and respect for those folks at the Old Simpson Church who first started our food pantry. They essentially stepped out in faith to provide food for neighbors who were in need of it. However, they had some trust that they would be able to find the resources to make that happen. And indeed, they did. And we have continued with that. We have tried to step out in faith as we needed to, as we saw that there were needs to expand the food pantry. But we didn't do it blindly. We knew that we had the assurance that we had the foundation, the infrastructure of people wisely using the ways and means that God has given us as a congregation to provide things like making sure that the utilities were kept on, that we could maintain a safe temperature in the food pantry for all of the food that we're entrusted with distributing, that we could keep the internet running to keep the records that we need, that we had the administrative support in the office. We have very generous donations to help us support the direct costs of the food pantry, but there's a whole bundle of indirect costs that we don't even see, but we rely on. And so that helped me realize that giving to the church is not solely and not firstly a matter of balancing the budget, but it's a way of enabling us to be the hands and feet of Christ in the world, which we toss off that phrase, but what does it really mean? It means that we have strong hands, capable feet, capable minds, but we wouldn't be able to exercise those without having the assurance of someone having our back behind us. As Abby has said, and I've heard other people say, ministry doesn't follow money. Money follows ministry. We need to have the imagination, the creativity, the trust to step out and take those new ministry steps. But we also need to have the assurance that behind us is support. And that God makes that support possible, but it's up to people to make it happen. Am I a perfect steward after all this? Absolutely not. I have fallen off the track a few times maybe more than a few times on making that check the first one, but I try to pull myself back and get back on the road, like resetting my spiritual GPS. And I'll share my final little secret with you. When I get all that right, when I remember that my stewardship is my spirituality, I really feel great. I've been so enriched by my experiences here and by those that I'm looking forward to in the future. So I hope that you will join me in continuing our stewardship journey together well after this campaign is over. So, as Abby says, let it be so. Thank you.